never thought I'd tell this story, not out loud, and certainly not to the world. But sometimes, silence becomes too heavy to carry. My name's Margaret Lee, and I live in a quiet neighborhood in Birmingham, Alabama, where the air smells of gardenias and the past lingers in every corner of my house. I'm 71 years old, and until last spring, I thought my family respected the things that mattered to me, the memories, the love, and the history stitched into every piece of my life. I was wrong. My husband, Arthur, passed away 3 years ago. He was my heart, my calm in the storm. When he died, I poured myself into preserving the little things he left behind, his books, his handwriting, his music. But my pride and comfort were my dresses, the ones he'd saved up for when we were newlyweds. Every anniversary, he'd surprise me with something special, a soft silk dress, a church gown, even the floral sundress I wore when we renewed our vows on our 40th anniversary. Each dress held a story, and a piece of us. My daughter, Vanessa, never quite understood that. She's 38, sharp, confident, and always chasing what's next. She lives just 20 minutes away but often acts like she's from another world, all business meetings, brunches, and social media stories. I adore her, but sometimes I don't recognize her anymore. When she started visiting more often last year, I thought maybe she was finally slowing down, reconnecting. She'd show up with coffee, talking about how she wanted to help around the house, reorganize, modernize the place. She said things like, "Mom, this attic looks like a time capsule," and I'd just smile, not realizing that she was setting the stage for something I'd never forgive. It began on a rainy Wednesday. She came over, hair perfectly done despite the weather, holding a notebook full of decluttering plans. I remember the way she walked through the house, her heels clicking like a metronome, stopping at my closet door. "Mom," she said, her tone almost too casual, "you don't even wear half of these anymore. Don't you think it's time to let go?" I chuckled, not catching the edge in her voice. "Sweetheart, these dresses aren't just clothes. They're memories. Arthur bought most of them himself." She smiled, but not the soft, daughterly smile I remembered. This one was tight, polite. "Of course, Mom. We'll keep the important ones. Just, maybe donate the rest? You know, to make space. You don't want to live buried under things, do you?" I should have said no right then. I should have locked that closet. But she was my daughter. I trusted her. That night, as I sat with my cup of chamomile tea, I heard her downstairs in the storage room, humming along to the radio. I thought nothing of it, until I caught the sound of garbage bags being tied, one after another. The next morning, she was gone. And so were half of my dresses. When I called, she laughed softly. "Mom, don't worry, I took the ones with stains, the ones you never wear. I donated them to a local charity." My chest tightened. "Vanessa, those weren't just old dresses, some of those were from before you were born." She sighed. "Mom, please. Don't get emotional. I kept the nice ones, the designer ones. I just wanted to give back, okay? Designer ones." She meant the ones that had resale value. That's when I felt something shift inside me, a cold, quiet kind of anger. For the next few days, I couldn't sleep. I'd open my closet and see empty hangers swinging like ghosts. The air felt thinner, the silence sharper. Every memory Arthur and I had, every anniversary, every photograph, felt violated. Then something strange happened. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, stopped by to drop off banana bread. She's a lovely woman, chatty, always in the know. As we talked, she mentioned seeing Vanessa at a boutique downtown. "Your daughter's got great taste," she said with a chuckle. She was dropping off some vintage dresses, beautiful things. Looked like something from the 50s, maybe even handmade. I froze. I smiled, but my hands trembled around the plate of banana bread. Oh. Did she say where? Mrs. Patterson shrugged. That new consignment shop, Velvet Revival, I think. That night, I drove there myself. I told the clerk I was looking for something special. The moment I walked in, I saw it. Hanging in the display window, under soft golden light, was my floral anniversary dress, the one Arthur gave me when our son was still alive, the one with the tiny embroidered violets he said matched my eyes. There it was, my memory, my love, marked with a little white tag. $245. Vintage condition. My throat burned. My heart broke, but behind that pain, something else began to stir. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry. I just walked out, sat in my car, and whispered to myself, "You're not going to let her get away with this." That night, I opened my old photo albums, each one filled with dates, pictures, receipts, handwritten notes Arthur had tucked in the dress boxes. I had proof, not of theft, but of truth. Proof that these weren't just things. They were history. Vanessa thought she'd cleaned house. But she'd started a storm she couldn't contain. And if you're still listening, don't go anywhere, because what came next made me realize how little I truly knew my daughter, and how far I was willing to go to make her understand. When I woke up the next morning, I told myself it was all just a misunderstanding. Maybe Vanessa didn't realize what she'd done. Maybe she didn't remember which dress was which. That's what I told myself, the kind of lie you whisper to keep your heart from breaking. But deep down, I knew better. I couldn't stop thinking about that boutique, the soft music, the smell of lavender and leather, and that awful little price tag dangling from my memories. So, I called Vanessa. I didn't mention what I'd seen. Not yet. I just asked her, "Honey, could you come by this weekend? I'd like to talk." She hesitated. "Mom, I'm really busy." "Can it wait? It's important." A sigh. "Fine. Sunday." When she arrived, she looked radiant, like someone who'd slept well, laughed all week, and had nothing to hide. I'd spent the last 2 nights replaying every word she'd said, every bag she'd carried, every smile that now looked like a smirk in my memory. We sat in the living room. The same room where Arthur used to play jazz records on Sundays. The same room where she'd played with her dolls as a child. I looked at her and asked, gently, "Vanessa, did you sell my dresses?" Her lips parted, and for a split second, her eyes flickered, not guilt, but calculation. Then she smiled. "Mom, I told you, I donated them." To Velvet Revival? The color drained from her face, just for a heartbeat. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, resting my hands on my knees. I saw them. My floral dress. The one from our 40th anniversary. It was hanging in their window, with a price tag. She blinked, then laughed softly, a dry, practiced sound. "Oh, that. Yeah, I might have taken a few to consignment." "Mom, listen, I didn't mean to upset you. But you've got to understand, those dresses were just collecting dust. At least now someone can appreciate them." "Appreciate them?" My voice cracked. "Those dresses were my history. Your father's love. You didn't ask, you didn't even tell me." Her tone shifted. "Mom, you're overreacting. It's just stuff." I stared at her, really stared. The daughter I raised would have understood sentiment, not just status. But this version of her, polished and detached, looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. "Just stuff," I repeated quietly. "Do you know what I wore when your father proposed to me?" She opened her mouth but didn't answer. That blue satin dress, the one you tossed in a black bag without a second glance. The room fell silent. Outside, a dog barked somewhere, and the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the air like a metronome of my disappointment. Then, with a flick of her hair, she said, "I'm sorry if that hurt you. But Mom, you keep holding on to the past. I'm trying to help you move forward. Don't twist this into something it's not." And that's when I realized something sharp and cold. This wasn't a mistake. This was control. She didn't want to help. She wanted to curate my life, to reshape my memories into something that fit her image. When she left, I didn't stop her. I just stood by the window, watching her drive away, her car gleaming in the afternoon light. But I wasn't crying anymore. I was thinking. That night, I called the boutique. I told them I was a collector, interested in purchasing a few pieces that recently came in under the name Vanessa Lee. The woman on the phone hesitated. "Oh yes, she's been in twice this week." Lovely items, sold very fast, though. "Do you keep records?" I asked softly. "For consignment?" "Yes, of course. We log every sale and photograph the pieces for our online store." That was all I needed. The next day, I took a walk downtown. I wore my plainest clothes, tied my hair back, and slipped on Arthur's old jacket. I didn't want to be recognized as anyone's mother, just a woman with a mission. At Velvet Revival, the clerk greeted me kindly. "Looking for anything in particular?" "Yes," I said. "I think you might have had a few dresses in here that belong to me." She frowned. "Oh. What makes you think that?" I smiled faintly. "Because my husband embroidered my initials inside every one of them." I showed her an old photo, me and Arthur, the floral dress in full color. She looked at the picture, then at me, and her face fell. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. We didn't know." She went into the back room, and when she returned, she was holding a garment bag. Inside was one of my late husband's favorites, a pale yellow lace dress I wore to our son's graduation. I took it in my hands, fingers trembling. "How much?" I whispered. She shook her head. "Please, just take it." When I left the store, I didn't feel better. I felt hollow, but sharper. The kind of sharpness that comes from pain waiting for purpose. That night, I logged onto my laptop, something I rarely did. I found Velvet Revival's online listings. And there they were, my dresses, one after another, under the seller tag Vili_designs. My daughter's account. Each one described with pretentious language, vintage hand-stitched 1970s gown, lightly worn, elegant southern charm. Prices ranging from $200 to $800. And in that moment, I saw the full picture. Vanessa hadn't just gotten rid of my things for space. She was building something, a curated brand, maybe even a business. Selling my memories for profit. I sat there for hours, reading every listing, my tea growing cold beside me. When I finally closed the laptop, I whispered to the empty room, "You took my love and turned it into a transaction." And right then, I made myself a promise. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to let her build her little empire. Let her believe she'd gotten away with it. Because when the time came, I'd make sure everyone saw what she'd really built, and whose memories she'd stolen to do it. After that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Arthur's hands, gentle, steady, folding those dresses for me all those years ago. He used to hum while he worked, saying, "Every stitch tells our story, Maggie." Now those stitches had $signs on them. Vanessa hadn't just taken fabric. She'd taken meaning. For a week, I barely left my house. The phone rang, I ignored it. The doorbell chimed, I stayed still. I wasn't ready to face her, not yet. But something was changing inside me. Something precise, like a needle threading through grief toward clarity. Every morning, I made myself tea, sat by the window, and thought about every time I'd said yes to make her happy. Every time I'd said, "That's fine, sweetheart," instead of standing my ground. And for what? So she could erase me piece by piece under the label of helping? No more. I started keeping a notebook. Just an old leather one Arthur used for grocery lists. But inside, I began writing things down, not emotions, not anger. Facts. Dates, photos, screenshots. Evidence. Because I knew one thing about Vanessa, she cared about image. Reputation meant more to her than love. She needed people to admire her home, her taste, her success. And that was exactly where I'd hit her. One afternoon, I decided to attend her little launch event. She'd been promoting it online, the Revival collection, featuring curated vintage from the Lee family archive. The Lee family archive. I laughed out loud when I saw that. I walked in quietly, dressed in one of my plain church dresses, the kind she'd once called Grandma Beige. The boutique was packed, lights, music, people sipping champagne while my history hung on racks around them. And there she was, Vanessa. Beautiful, confident, basking in the compliments. She didn't see me at first. But when she did, her smile faltered for half a second, then snapped right back. "Mom. You came," she said brightly, loud enough for everyone to hear. I smiled, calm as ever. "I wouldn't miss it, sweetheart." She introduced me to her friends. "This is my mom, she inspired this entire collection." I nodded politely. Yes, I suppose I did. One of her friends said, "These pieces are stunning. You must have had great taste." I smiled at her, eyes never leaving Vanessa. I did. Until someone decided to auction it off without asking. There was a beat of silence. Vanessa's cheeks flushed. "Mom," she hissed softly, pulling me aside. "Can we not do this here?" "Oh, I'm just proud," I said sweetly. After all, not every daughter builds a business out of her mother's memories. Then I patted her arm and left, leaving her standing there, smiling that frozen hostess smile. That night, my inbox lit up. Messages from relatives, old friends, people asking, "Did you really donate your things for her store?" I ignored them. I wasn't ready yet. Revenge, my husband once said, is like sewing, one wrong stitch and it unravels. So, I kept sewing my plan quietly. Over the next few weeks, I started reaching out to people, not her circle, but mine. Women from the church, friends from the old community center, even a few journalists who loved human interest stories. I didn't tell them everything, just enough. I told them how my daughter had borrowed my wardrobe for her new venture, and how she'd forgotten to credit where those pieces truly came from. A friend from the local paper, Judy, a woman with a soft spot for stories of heritage, came by one afternoon. She brought coffee and her camera. "I want to do a feature," she said. "On you. On women preserving family history through fashion. We'll show your dresses, your photos, the real story." I smiled. That would be lovely. We spent hours going through what little was left in my attic. Judy took pictures, asked questions, and before she left, she said, "Maggie, I think your story will touch hearts. It's personal, but universal." Exactly what I wanted. A week later, the article went live. A widow's wardrobe, one woman's fight to preserve her husband's legacy. It went viral locally. People commented things like "so touching" and "families today forget what matters." Vanessa called that evening, furious. "Mom, why would you do that? You made me look like a villain." I stayed calm. "I didn't say your name." "Oh, don't play dumb. Everyone knows who you are. People are messaging me non-stop. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" I took a slow sip of my tea. "No, sweetheart. But I imagine it feels a lot like watching your wedding dress sell for $300 on Etsy." Silence. Then she hung up. For days, she didn't speak to me. But I wasn't done. You see, Vanessa's boutique had started getting traction online. Local influencers were tagging her, calling her brand authentic vintage. But she'd been careless. Some of the dresses still had my name embroidered inside. Mel, tiny but visible in some of the photos she'd posted. So, one night, I created a new account under the name Maggie L Threads and started commenting under each post. "Beautiful piece, belonged to my late husband's wife. Handmade in 1973. This one? Sewn for a graduation." Funny how stories get recycled. I didn't need to insult or accuse. I just told the truth. People noticed. They started asking questions. "Wait, are you the original owner? Didn't she say these were her designs? Why is there an embroidery with your initials?" The comments spread like wildfire. And I sat back, cup of tea in hand, watching her empire tremble. But here's the thing, revenge wasn't making me happy. I thought it would. I thought reclaiming control would fill that hollow space inside me. But instead, every time she called, crying, begging, or accusing, I felt this ache, deep in my chest. She was still my daughter. One night, after weeks of silence, she showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, makeup streaked. "Mom, you ruined me." I looked at her for a long moment. "No, Vanessa. You did that yourself." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just wanted people to respect me." "And you thought stealing respect from your mother would do that?" She said nothing. I sighed softly, stepping aside. "Come in, sweetheart." We didn't talk about business or betrayal that night. We just sat, two women bound by blood and mistakes. She cried. I didn't. I'd already shed my tears weeks ago. But even then, even in that fragile piece, a part of me knew forgiveness was one thing. Forgetting was another. And my revenge? It wasn't over yet. Because karma, darling, doesn't come knocking. It walks in quietly, dressed in truth. After that night, the one where Vanessa came crying to my door, things went eerily calm. She stopped calling. Stopped posting. Stopped pretending. For a few weeks, I thought maybe that was the end of it, that the silence meant she learned something. But then, one afternoon, while having tea at my favorite cafe downtown, I overheard two women whispering at the next table. Did you hear? Vanessa Lee's starting a collaboration with a designer from Atlanta. Yeah. She's calling it her Heirloom Revival 2.0. I froze. Heirloom Revival. The same name she'd used for her first collection, the one built off my memories, my clothes, my life. It hit me then, she wasn't sorry. Not at all. She was rebranding. Turning guilt into marketing. And that was when I decided it was time to finish what I started. For the next few weeks, I went quiet again. No posts, no comments, no calls. Just patience. Because if there's one thing a mother learns over decades, it's timing. When to speak. When to wait. When to let the storm hit. I began gathering what little evidence I had left, the old photographs of me in the dresses, Arthur's handwriting on the original garment tags, even the letters we exchanged where he described each piece. I scanned everything, neatly organized it, and sent it, anonymously, to a journalist who'd once written about family-run fashion frauds. Her name was Clara Jensen, and she loved one thing above all else, poetic justice. Within a week, she called me. "Mrs. Lee, I can't believe this story. Your daughter used your wardrobe for her brand and never credited you?" "She didn't just forget credit, dear," I said softly. "She rewrote history." Clara paused. "Would you be willing to go on record?" I smiled faintly. "Let's just say, when the truth needs to be told, it usually finds a voice." The article dropped on a Thursday morning. Front page of the Southern Style Review. Behind the seams, the true origin of Vanessa Lee's Heirloom Revival brand. Featuring exclusive photos of original dresses, embroidery tags, and proof of their creation by Margaret Lee, née Collins, 1970 to 1990. The internet did the rest. Twitter threads exploded. TikToks compared my old photos with her new designs. Comment sections turned brutal, influencers called her a brand thief, others said she stole from her own mother. Vanessa tried to defend herself at first, posting teary videos, saying she wanted to honor her mother's legacy. But the receipts were undeniable. In one photo, a close-up of a pink satin gown, my initials ML were embroidered right under the collar. Thousands of people commented. "This isn't a tribute, it's theft. Imagine stealing your mom's memories for clout. Some wounds money can't fix." Within 3 days, her business lost partnerships. Within a week, she deleted her brand account. And me? I didn't say a word. Not one. 2 weeks later, she showed up again. This time, she didn't look angry. She looked empty. Dark circles, hair unbrushed, eyes that had cried themselves out. She stood in my doorway holding a single box, one of the few she hadn't donated. "Mom," she whispered. "I thought I could make something beautiful out of what you left behind. I thought, if I built something, people would see me. Not just your daughter." My voice was steady. "And now?" She looked down at the box. "Now I see. I should have built with you, not over you." I took the box, opened it. Inside was my favorite dress, a soft lavender one Arthur bought me for our 10th anniversary. She must have kept it, untouched. I ran my hand over the fabric, then looked at her. "Vanessa, success built on someone else's sorrow never lasts." She nodded, tears sliding down her face. "I know." We sat for a long while, no words between us. Just silence. Heavy, but not hateful. I told her she could fix her mess, but not by hiding. "If you want forgiveness, tell the truth." Out loud. A month later, she did. Vanessa posted a long video, no makeup, no filters, just honesty. She told the world how she'd taken her mother's belongings without permission, how greed had blinded her, and how karma had humbled her. People, surprisingly, forgave her. They called her brave, honest, even redeemed. And though I didn't need the public's forgiveness, I felt something loosen in my chest that day. Because revenge, when done right, doesn't destroy, it restores. A few months later, we started something new, together. It wasn't a boutique. It wasn't about money. We began a small project called Threads of Memory. For every dress we repaired or recreated, we asked the owner to share its story, who wore it, why it mattered, what memories it carried. We turned those stories into short videos, shared them online, and within weeks, people began sending us old clothes from all over the country. Each one had love stitched into it. Vanessa handled the designs. I handled the stories. We never spoke about the betrayal again, but every time she sewed, I saw the guilt meld into grace. Every time she smiled, I saw a little girl again, the one who once twirled in my dresses and said, "Mom, I want to be like you someday." Maybe she finally had. Because revenge, in the end, isn't about payback. It's about balance. And sometimes, the sweetest justice is letting people watch you rebuild what they tried to destroy. What would you have done in my place? Would you have exposed her, or forgiven her? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story hit home, give it a like, subscribe for more emotional tales, and remember, some stitches can't be undone. Broken heart. It's been almost 2 years since everything happened, since the boxes, the betrayal, the headlines. I still keep that lavender dress in my wardrobe. Not because I need it, but because it reminds me that pain can be recycled into something beautiful, if you're patient enough to stitch it back together. Vanessa and I talk almost every day now. We don't avoid the past, but we don't live in it either. Sometimes, she'll call while working on a new project and ask, "Mom, what would Dad think of this?" And I always tell her the truth, because the truth, I've learned, is the only fabric that never fades. Our little workshop, Threads of Memory, has grown into something I never expected. Women mail us their old garments, hoping we'll breathe new life into them. Some are tattered wedding gowns, some are uniforms from a husband long gone. Each one carries a heartbeat. We repair them carefully, with love, not to erase their scars, but to honor them. Because that's what life really is, isn't it? A patchwork of loss, love, and second chances. Sometimes people online still comment things like, "I can't believe your daughter did that to you." Or, "You must have been so angry." And I was furious. But I also learned that anger is like a needle, sharp enough to wound, but also strong enough to mend, depending on how you use it. If I had stayed bitter, I would have poisoned myself. Instead, I turned that bitterness into thread, and I sewed us both a way out. One quiet evening last spring, Vanessa came over with dinner. We sat outside under the oak tree, the same one Arthur planted when we first moved into this house. She handed me a small box, wrapped in soft linen. Inside was a brooch, gold with tiny engraved words. Every stitch tells our story. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the remorse in her eyes, but also something else, understanding. She smiled softly. "Dad used to say that, right?" I nodded. He did. And now, you finally know what he meant. The world can be cruel. People will take from you, your things, your peace, your memories, and they'll tell themselves they had the right. But life has a funny way of balancing things out. Karma isn't loud. It doesn't scream or announce itself. It just arrives, quietly, like a shadow at sunset. And if you wait long enough, you'll see that truth always fits, perfectly. So if you're listening to this, and you've been wronged by someone you love, maybe a daughter, a son, a friend, don't rush your revenge. Don't let anger be the only thread you pull. Instead, step back. Watch. Wait. Let time do its work. Because the sweetest justice isn't destruction, it's dignity. And one day, they'll look at you, like Vanessa did, and realize that the person they broke is the one who taught them how to heal. What would you have done in my place? Would you have forgiven, or let karma do the sewing? If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe for more true-to-life emotional tales, and share your story in the comments below. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that it's never too late to mend what's been torn.